Well, greetings. I trust everybody is doing well. And as we head towards the end of a one calendar year and we look towards the start of another, I feel like one of the most effective topics that we could discuss is one that sometimes it just kind of takes on this feel of magic. Um, I know this just because as a COO, there are a lot of people out there, quite frankly, who view what I do as magic. In fact, most of the businesses that I've worked with in the past, there's at least some, if not a lot of people, who viewed it as almost magic or things happen. In fact, one organization that I left that really began to struggle shortly after I departed, um, I would have to slate that up to the fact that they had this simple viewpoint that operations, it just magically happens and that it doesn't matter either who or what is being done, everything's going to be fine and life will continue to go on. Well, today, again, even though this is being recorded in December and we're looking towards the start of a new year here in a month, this is a topic that is relevant any time of year. And, this would be something that, would be relevant, say, is as relevant in March as it were in July, as it were even in October. And, we could pick out, different times of the year, different reasons why it would be so important to have an emphasis on operations. But the point of the matter is this, that operations is not magic. It is a lot of hard work and effort. And it is something that if you do really well, you can be rewarded in multiple ways. Obviously, if you were a founder and you're trying to secure funding for your startup, uh, an very operationally sound, well built organization is much better positioned than one that they may have a product, they may have some customers, but they don't have nearly the capacity to build it and grow it. So at the end of the day, this is something that, regardless of stage of business, that is extremely relevant. This is really, for lack of a better word, my forte, and really a lot of the work that I do is very heavily um, looked at through this lens. But within the concept of exit planning, operations, and just making sure everything is as lean and as well built and well documented as possible is something that is not magic, but at the end of the day is going to be one of the most effective means of well positioning your business. So let's go ahead and let me share the screen here so we can um, get this show on the road. Um, Really, what I want to do during today's webinar is a bit of a deep dive into really the practical guide to the operational work that is required for a premium exit. I'm sure everybody who wants to exit wants to make sure that they not only do it on their terms, but they get the best value. Here's the reality. If you've followed other webinars, especially ones which take a look at a deep dive into the numbers that are really reveal just how challenging exits are, what you would discover is only 2 to 3% of business owners that successfully exit are satisfied and get the most value of it. So the reality is, if you want to be in this really small group, which it's my hope that, as this industry grows and improves, that we're able to increase that number. But if you want to be in this select company, what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to come to terms with the fact that operations, from a business perspective, is not magic, but involves a tremendous amount of hard work. So let's start off then with the $8 million transformation, which is kind of where we're going to really uh, dive into the meat and potatoes here today. This company was listed initially at 15 million, but it sold for 23 million. And by the way, when I say listed, I'm not saying in term, I'm just, using a term as far as like, that's what, um, you know, the investment banker said that, it was likely valued at. And it wound up selling at $23 million. Now, what happened here is the business owner realized that they needed to invest significantly operationally. And the reason why wasn't necessarily because they wanted to improve things, but because they needed to get to the point that they were less dependent on the company. They were less dependent on the owner because let's face it, if there's any dependency on the owner, that is going to really take a huge shot at your transferable value. So what it was that this was there was no magic here. And by the way, you might be thinking, okay, is this as an actual example? No, this is a hypothetical example that was simulated. But the reality is this is illustrating that, what was needed to be done in order to go from, medium dependency to low dependency and, also make sure the leadership team was built out. So, I mean, really at the end of the day, while obviously this one particular example was built you just showing illustrating the importance of not only eliminating founder dependency but also building a good solid leadership team, making sure good institutional memory was in place. The reality is, these numbers, they could be substantially larger. And the misconception is that, it was like, okay, everything worked up and the stars aligned. No, it's a matter of a lot of good hard work was put in to make sure that value was received. So, what we want to do now is we want to take a look quickly at the truth about operations. And really, there are three misconceptions that we want to really quickly dismiss. The first one is that business owners assume there are secret formulas, like, a get rich quick scheme. It's like, okay, well, if you do this, it solves it. Well, no, the reality is, in order to figure out, we need to actually look at what you're doing now and figure out, okay, no, not only what quantify it and document it, but also most importantly, take a very serious look and think, okay, how can we improve upon it? So that's going to be a lot of study. It's going to be a lot of painstaking work on a lot of people's part in the business and just making sure we list everything down. And then we just look at it and think, okay, are we doing it better or could we tighten things up somewhere? So there's a lot of work. And the secret formula is no, there is no secret formula. There's a lot of hard work. The next thing is like, okay, success. Well, that is lucky. When they kind of look at other companies, they think, like, how in the world did he just how was so and so successful? I mean, his business, he's not as dedicated to it, and he just managed to get premium multiples. He must have been lucky. Well, there's a very good chance that the reason why he got premium multiples was number one, you consider them premium multiples. His business, it's possible the industry he was in, they may not have really been premium multiples. They may have been actually on the lower end. It's just because he may be, for example, in the tech industry, he was actually able to get a much better deal than you could have. So, it's not like, okay, it's magic or somebody gets lucky. Multiples are dependent upon the industry as well as dependent upon really a lot of fixed things, again, such as, how dependent is the business on the owner? How are things when it comes to cash flow? Is this a profitable business? So, at the end of the day, it's not a matter of luck or it's a matter of like, okay, yeah, they just hit the jackpot. It's like, no, there are some really good explanations about why things happen. And, understanding that is going to help mitigate it. The next thing is, they imagine that, okay, there must be some genius who's doing it. Now, I know some people over the years have said, "Oh yeah, you know how to get it done, this, that, and the other." The reality is, I know from my perspective, I know a lot of other fractionals, whether they be COOs or CFOs. There's no genius. Now, yeah, some of us may be smarter than others, but the reality is that there's not genius level insight that's required. In fact, really, it's a matter of doing the simple foundational things right. And the more solid and accurate you are foundationally, the better off things will be. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to show you exactly what operational preparation looks like, and as well what work needs to be done, how long it takes, what it costs, and how you can get started in 90 days. So, here is a key diagnostic test that you as a business owner or founder can take. Can your business maintain performance for 90 days without you? If the answer is yes, well, then hey, great. That means that you have operational systems worth selling. You have something that has transferable value. If no, then all essentially you have is an expensive job dressed as a business. I remember one person I worked with for years, he always liked to introduce himself as a business owner. He's like, I'm a business owner, and viewed himself as a businessman. At church, he always wanted to be on committees. He wanted to be, he felt like, okay, since he was a business owner, that, you know, he had all this insight. Well, the reality was, at the end of the day, he was essentially running a very expensive job. He really didn't have much operationally going underneath him. Um, the business actually, just because of some decisions he made, actually wound up actually contracting substantially. So the reality is, I know there's some people out there who are not going to like this, but the reality is this: is if you can't step away from the business for 90 days, you don't have a business. You just have an expensive job. Now, you might think, okay, well, can I turn it into a business? Well, there's a good chance you can. There's a possibility you might not be able to. But what it's going to be is, in order to pass this 90-day test, as you can imagine, it's going to take a tremendous amount of work. So, understanding then obviously this distinction is critical, because this is going to be why what we're going to see that some business sales fail. So we're going to take a look quickly at the 4 exit killing challenges. First of all, there's a valuation disagreement. The business owner thinks it's more valuable. And here, the operations and a lot of other aspects of the business don't support the expectations. And the buyers are calculating, okay, based on what we're seeing, how valuable is it? So, if you want to make sure that your expectations come into line so you don't have valuation disagreements, well, make sure that your business is as sound operationally as possible. Another aspect is the emotional attachment. There's really no operational separation between your identity as the business owner and the business systems. You literally view it as your child and part of your family. That's a bit of a problem, and that's something that obviously is going to really hurt you in the long run. Operational baggage, you've had years of shortcuts, and that's going to be creating due diligence landmines. Thankfully, if you know what you need to do and you do it, and you just try to keep things in line, it's not ideal, but, it's a matter of like, okay, just taking one step at a time in the right direction. There are some, again, I remember one business owner that I worked with who I could sit and talk with them for hours saying, you need to do this, 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 and this, and then turn around, and a few months later, it's clear that not only they've done it, but now they're like, okay, I can't understand why things are not working out. And, if you're in a situation like that where you're just not going to do what you need to do, even if you've been told, well, you got to figure out how to make it work. It's going to be hard initially, but, if you're able to get rid of the operational baggage and, just do what you need to do and just focus on that, you'll be in great shape. Now, the final exit killing challenge is founder dependency. Critical knowledge exists only in the founder's head, or it could be, kind of something lesser than that, where, critical knowledge exists in the heads of several key people. Well, if something happens to you or John Q. Public or Joe Blow, there goes pretty much the business, because if it's not documented, then, as soon as they walk away, it doesn't exist. Like literally, this is the ticking time bomb. So, critical knowledge, and really knowledge of any type, it needs to be documented. It should never live in somebody's head. Unless, of course, you want to ensure that your deal gets killed before it has a chance to start. So here is what I need you to be thinking about, as I need you to really take some time looking at all 4 of these exit killing challenges and see the role that operations plays in them. And what you'll begin to realize is operations is just as important, if not more important, than financial information. And the reason why is because finances, yeah, obviously they're key and everybody's going to want to look at them, but finances are a direct outgrowth of operations. If you're not doing things well, the financials are going to show it. If things are going okay, the financials will show it. If you have a really well built, well run, lean business, the financials will show it. So, really, the financials are more of an effect than a cause. And that's why operations are so key in order to make sure that you get everything figured out right away. So, if you have one of these or even multiple of these as problems, what's the solution? Well, that's where we're going to talk a little bit about the work that I do. Um, when it comes to getting a business ready, it's these 7 operational pillars. They're not abstract concepts. I mean, they're really quite simple and straightforward as what they are. There's going to be no shortcuts in each case. And quite frankly, with a lot of these areas, um, there's going to be a lot of painstaking work before you will be able to start seeing some progress. But when we get it done, then it's like we'll start seeing progress in droves. So systematically, even though it says it'll be worked across 3 to 5 years, in most cases, it'll probably be more like 1 to 2, ideally. Um, possibly up to 3 or 4. But obviously, if we want to get the business ready for selling it, we want to get this done quickly. Um, so these 7 areas: data and analytics, budget and controls, strategic planning, process, policy and procedures, operationals, automation, multi-channel marketing, and tech analysis and improvement. These 7 areas, they're pivotal for making sure we have a really sound, well-built business. There's a lot of overlap between what a fractional CFO and a COO does. I understand that. I've had a lot of work with doing CFO type of work as well as controller work. And I understand how a lot of this is supposed to fit together. And really, what our goal is, it's not necessarily a matter of uh, if this is well done. The goal should be a matter of looking at what you're currently doing and then finding the gaps, not a matter of saying, okay, this is EOS. We're going to just completely ignore everything that you're doing, and we're going to just implement this. Everything throw out the baby with the bathwater. I do a version of EOS. It's not obviously with the EOS certification, but because of the nature of what the business is, that we're really trying to work to get things documented while building up the leadership team. And then once the leadership team is in place, that's when we turn over to the turn over the leadership team really and start going through the EOS type of work. So, having taken a look at this, really what is important is I want us to take a look really quickly at each pillar and see how one leads to the other. As you see, data and analytics is important, but clean data is worthless if you're burning cash, which is what brings us to the budget development and controls. But buyers don't want to buy your past, they want to buy your future, which is why strategic planning is so important. But plans are great on paper, but how do you plan to execute? Well, that's how the process, policies, and procedures come into play. Once you're documented, you'll immediately see inefficiencies. Well, again, that's where the operations optimization is going to come in. And then, um, the business is running efficiently, but who's bringing the revenue in? Well, that's why looking at multi-channel marketing is so key. And then all of this sits on top of tech stack. Is it going to work? Well, and that's where that comes in. So there's a lot of work here, and it's very interrelated. But the beauty of it is the more that we work on these things, the faster things will come together. Initially, it'll seem slow and tedious, but once we start getting good practices in place and start gaining some momentum, then as we keep adding things, we will start seeing things to accelerate, and we'll start seeing a much stronger, better built business emerge. So here is kind of like, here's where the timeline is. you know, your typical 3 to 5 year outline could look like this. Ideally, I believe we could get it into a much quicker time span. Obviously, the shortest pillar might take 6 to 8 months, the longest 18 to 36. The average is 12 to 18. And the reason why we have these things going on is, a lot of them will likely be able to be run simultaneously, but it's going to have to be involving different individuals, so that way we're not overwhelming the business. We got to work slowly and methodically. So in years 1 through 5, we're going to start out in year 1 with comprehensive audit, quick wins, and begin data analytics and financial cleanup. Then years 2 to 3 is where we're going to be completing documentation, implementing systems, and tech modernization. Seasons years 4 through 5, that preparing due diligence is actually something that we will have already done. We'll be turning it over, and we'll also be working towards proving independence. Ideally, I believe that years 4 through 5 could probably happen more in year 3, and then years 2 to 3 could probably be combined. But again, this is going to be something if it's going to really take the full 5 years. And really, with the proving independence, ideally, we'll be, really getting that going while the due diligence process is going. So at the end of the day, you cannot really compress a technical timeline. And at the same time, you really can't necessarily expand it. Basically, this is kind of like a baby. It comes when it's ready. And with us, there's a lot of work that's involved, but if we work methodically and quickly and try to be as efficient as possible, we will be able to get there in a much more satisfactory capacity. Okay. So now let's take a look at an investment case. So with this particular case, the do-it-yourself case, it costs between $200K to $400K. The fractional COO, it's actually between $350 to $750K. Obviously, if you're going to go with me for 5 years, it'll be right around $300K. And then the full-time COO, it could be between $1 to $2 million. So here is what the return on investment is going to be looking like. Without preparation, you might get it between 3 to 4.6 million. With preparation, it'll probably be closer to 6 to 7 million, with a value creation of 2 million to 3 million. Again, there's a really good chance that these numbers could be bigger. So it could be more like 30 to 46 million without preparation, but with preparation, it could be 60 to 7 million. Now, obviously, not every business is going to be that. It's going to be really dependent on your revenues and EBITDA. But and even then, that is as an example, which I'm not exactly sure which industry it is. Those numbers are a little low potentially, but the reality is, what I am trying to illustrate. And while I do feel like, I'm sitting here looking at these thinking, okay, I feel like they're a little off just knowing the way multiples work. The reality is you're almost going to get twice as much with preparation. And the reason why is because you have somebody who's able to come in and focus and assist you, because this essentially is surgery. We're trying to separate you from the business. You really can't perform surgery on yourself. And that's why you need somebody to come in and help get everything extricated, get the business well built, and make sure that it is ready and seaworthy, and then just guide it through the process. So having taken a look at that, let's take a look at the exit team. I have kind of discussed this in detail in other webinars, but in order to really make it tie it together, here are the 3 types of advisors that you're going to get. First, the fractional COO, who's going to be building operational value through the 7 pillars that have been illustrated. And they're going to be creating the documentation as well as, working with the M&A advisor as needed. and really should be running point to make sure all the due diligence documentation is acquired. The wealth manager, even though their work is going to be beginning in earnest 2 to 4 years before the exit, they ideally are going to be the ones who are actually going to be, bringing in the other team members and actually hopefully working with you before the exit process, just so that way you're able to develop a relationship. And what they're going to be working on in tax optimization, estate planning, and personal financial modeling. Your M&A advisor is going to be coming in, and his goal is going to be to maximizing the value that has been created operationally, as well as managing the transaction. Now, what's very important here is realizing that M&A advisors cannot create operational value. They're only able to sell what exists. So this is, again, why operations needs to come first in this process. So let's, before we go through it, let's quickly take a look at some myths here. This is kind of, I don't have a slide for this, but let's address these. Myth 1, I'll clean things up when I decide to sell. The reality is, if you try to get things cleaned up when you're ready to sell, is what happens if you start discovering that you have a lot of years-long problems in the making, some of which may actually date back to when you started a business. Well, it's not going to be as easy then. Myth number 2, my business is special. Normal rules don't apply. Yeah, that's a nice thought, but the reality is buyers, they apply due diligence across every industry, regardless of business. It's not like you have that 1 in a million business. In fact, there's a really good bet that if you have that 1 in a million business, you may not even understand why it is a 1 in a million business. So let's just not think, okay, our business is special. It is special to you since you built it, but the reality is, to the buyer, that there is nothing special to them. And I don't say that to be harsh, but I say that to be very realistic. Okay, myth number 3, operational improvements, they might hurt my business. I mean, hey, it's going to affect this business that we spent years building. And I understand that, because emotionally you might be afraid to make a change. But the reality is, the systems that we're going to be working on are actually going to improve things, not hurt it. It might look a little different, but at the end of the day, is if you're willing to do that, you're going to get a lot more value. Okay, myth number 4, I can hire somebody to do this in 12 months. Maybe. Depends on what we find. If you did everything right, very good chance it could take a year. I got some news for you, champ. There's a good chance that it'll probably take more like 2 years, maybe 3. If there's a lot that we need to fix, it could take 4 or 5. I mean, my goal is to get you situated and get you moved on, because I remember when I was working on my doctoral degree, how it seemed like it took forever, and I just wanted to be done with that. So I understand when it comes time for somebody wanting to move on, because, hey, I've had something hanging over my head for a while, and then I just know the desire to get rid of it. Well, the unfortunate reality is that, I can only go as quickly as possible. And the phrase haste makes waste is really true and applicable here. Myth number 5, this will cost more than it's worth. I don't think so. I mean, let's use the figure. Let's say we come in and your business is valued at 30 million, and I'm able to get it up to, say, 40 million in value. Well, it takes me 3 years to do it. That's 180,000, and you get 10 million. Now, you might be thinking, okay, well, how are you going to do all this? Well, again, like I said, it's not like rocket science. It's making sure everything is fully documented, everything is fully systematized. It's not like, there's going to be a tremendous amount of, financial investment here necessary, but it's the type of investment that ensures that this business, it can run regardless of who is there. And that's really, really, really what we need to do it. So, having said that, here is what my recommendation is before we hit this next slide, which is magic or methodology. I want you to try for your 90-day action plan, first of all, phase one, take the 90-day test. And what I want you to do is I want you to see how effective it is. And, it's possible you may only get to 1 or 2 weeks, and that'll be very clear. And it's possible you may decide, okay, yeah, I'm not going to be able to pass that test. But the key is you don't know what you know until you know it. So I recommend that being the first thing. And then if you're not able to do that, then really what I think you should do is if you have a wealth manager who has helped business owners exit their business, I would strongly encourage you to have a sit down with them and say that, we would, you need help. If you do not have a wealth manager who has worked with them, I would be willing to sit down and help you. And I would also probably try to help you find a wealth manager just because I believe, well, I can help with the business. I'm not going to be able to help you with the strategies that they're going to need to help you develop. And then, once we have that, then we need to figure out who's going to be the M&A advisor to form this team. And, every team's different. Some teams are going to require more people, some less, but those are the three key players. And, if we need to bring in more, we'll bring in more. Okay, so here is the choice that we have. Is it magic or is it methodology? Well, option number one, your chance is to wait and hope, keep everything the current way. And, you're probably going to need to accept a 10 to 30% valuation discount depending on, what you have not done, both operationally when it comes to documentation, books getting cleaned up. You're going to have to, and you're going to be running a very good chance at risking deal failure. And, you could be leaving 2 to 5 million on the table. I've seen deals as high as where 30 million got left. And, that's the wait and hope approach. Now, systematic preparation, you need to invest heavily. And what you would do is, if you're to work with me, you would address the 7 pillars that I like to focus on. You'll be able to likely command premium multiples. Now, it is possible that our AGI might not be as high as we would like it over a sustained period of time. And as a result, we might discover that, okay, well, it's not going to be as good. But really, again, what our goal is to position ourselves as well as possible. And, if we can attract multiple buyers, that would be ideal. And that's why the M&A advisory firm that I like to work with has a competitive bid process. And, I am a very, very firm champion in recommending them because I feel like it is to everyone's benefit that if we were to take their business to the market, that we will go with a organization that is really effective in driving up the value of a business. So here's the fundamental truth. Operations isn't magic. It's going to be systemic work over a period of 3 to 5 years. And really the question is, are you going to do the work or do you want to accept the discount? As you could see, those 7 pillars I laid out earlier, they build on each other. So the more effective we are at building on one on top of the other is, since they're interrelated, it's the idea of like a rising tide lifts all boats. Well, the better we get at one, it's going to help us with another, which is going to help us with another. But the key thing is realizing it's going to take work. And if we're willing to do it, we will be in really good shape. So let's go ahead and bring this full circle. That $8 million value increase, again, which, this is using a business which is very much on the small side. What really happened is you started off right at the beginning. You did an assessment, did the financial cleanup. You started working through all the documentation. Then we took a look at the operational systems and reduced founder dependency. Then we proved independence, really worked on revenue diversification. And, then we were able to really get towards modernizing any tech that needed to be done and validating improvements. And then at that point, the team was already assembled for the M&A exit. It was already on the market. So now we're in the process of selling. It's not magic. It's methodology. It's not like you go in and just, think, okay, well, I'm going to work with somebody and, we'll get everything. No, what needs to happen is there's a lot of work and we just need to make sure and get in there as quickly as possible. I'm going to close with this. The perfect time to have planned your exit was the day you started the business, because that was when you're like, okay, this business I'm starting, well, how am I going to exit it when the time comes? The next best time is today. If you've gotten all the way to the end of this presentation and you're interested in learning more about this, I would definitely love to talk with you and really just answer any questions and maybe help you out as you go on this journey of trying to exit your business. So my contact information is in the description. I would love to talk with you if you have any questions. And otherwise, thank you for your time and have a wonderful rest of the day.